welcome. Good. Malulele. Kia ora, good evening and welcome everyone to the University of Auckland and Newsroom Mayoral debate for 2022. It's a great turnout, thank you. You might be wondering why there are very few young faces among you. That's because Billie Eilish is playing down the road at Spark Arena. Welcome also to all the viewers on the live stream online. I'm Tim Murphy, co-editor of Newsroom and the MC tonight. A special welcome to the candidates, Craig Lord, Efeso Collins, Wayne Brown and Viv Beck. These guys get to see each other every day. They've done, I think, scores of events and debates together. Central government prime ministerial candidates get it easy. They do 3 or 4 major debates. These guys are doing them daily, so welcome. I always think that every audience and every event is good in its own way, though, in getting insight and understanding. And I hope we'll be able to deliver that on both fronts tonight. We're 1 month from election day and just over a week from voting papers starting to be sent out. Things are closing in quickly for you guys. A quick word on the format tonight. The candidates will have 2 minutes initially to set out their stock for being elected. It's a bit of a tight TED talk, but it's not as tight as some of the other events I've been doing, which have been up down to 30 seconds for a life story. So we welcome the context of your life and experience shortly. Then we'll have about 40 minutes of Q&A on some of the issues facing the city right now. And yes, please, we do welcome debate and challenge and in respectful way and within the time limits. We'll break up the big topics with some quick fire questions, which is pretty common to these kind of events. And then there'll be time for questions from you, the audience, before closing statements from these 4 musketeers. After the debate, we're very happy to have with us in the theatre a live panel who will take over from me, led by Today FM Drive Time host and former political reporter and editor Lloyd Burr, who has hurried here from his Drive Time live show he's just finished. Jonathan Milne, editor of Newsroom Pro. Jennifer Curtin, a professor of politics here at the university, and Alofa Solafai, who's Auckland University Student Association president. We welcome you guys and look forward to your views very shortly. Before we get underway, I'd quickly draw your attention to the housekeeping rules on the screen behind me, I hope. Yes. And ask you to familiarise yourself with them, and we'd be grateful if you could turn off your phone sound at least to silent before we start now. Now, to begin, starting from my left to right and maybe political left to right, can I ask Efeso Collins to give us his 2-minute opening pitch, what you bring to the job and what you want to do with it. You want us to stand or you happy for you to stay as you are? Yeah.
Tēnei te mihi ki a koutou katoa, e ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā rangatira, tēnā koutou, mihi a mai tātou katoa. I love this city, and I was born here. I've lived here most of my life, except for a couple of years when I was schooling in Samoa. And I think the key issues for our city at the moment are climate change and ensuring that we have a just, sustainable, people-centred city for the future of our children. I have 2 young daughters, and I want to make sure that I'm doing everything possible to ensure that her friends from school and generations to come will have a sustainable planet. And that means we're going to have to do everything we can to ensure that all of us are participating in a way in which we're going to protect our planet. We're going to ensure that there's a just society that all of us can transition from, whether it's through school and into the opportunities that we have. I've called for a mayoral coalition for people to talk about, mayors, leaders throughout the country to talk about climate change, to really challenge the Crown on what we're going to be doing. I think that's the way we lead the way forward. I believe that this campaign for me is about care, collaboration and courage. We've got to take take courageous steps. We've got to take the city with us, and we've got to ensure that everyone in the city is warmed to the idea. We don't just declare a climate emergency, but that we're sure that we're going to take practical steps to get there. I bring experience to the table. I've been a councillor now for 6 years, and I think that experience, having been through 6 annual plans, 2 long-term plans, and being part of a reset of the Auckland plan, which is our 30-year vision, gives me the experience to know how the place works, how the table works, and ensuring that Aucklanders get experience from me. So that's the plan for me going forward, and I love this city, and I'm really glad to be here and be standing for the mayoral office. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Craig Lord. I moved to Auckland by myself when I was 15 years old. I got a job in an engineering workshop, and I stayed with that company for 16 years, becoming a maintenance and diagnostic engineer in hydraulics and pneumatics, repairing some of Auckland's major production factory lines. I then changed tack after 16 years and started my own company doing broadcasting, media and communications, which I'm still doing today, 20 odd years later. Both of those roles, to me, have some fundamentals which are perfect for the role of mayor. The first being the engineering common sense that I'll bring to the table. We are very pragmatic people, engineers. We think logically and we do things that sound common sense. The second part of it, broadcasting, media and communications, means that probably for the first time in Super City history, you'll have a mayor that actually knows how to communicate with the people. Because at the end of the day, one of the major jobs for a mayor is to represent the city and the people that live in it. And that's why my policies focus on core services. I want to turn Auckland Council into a world-leading service provider, because that is its job. Its job is to serve you. That's what your rates are for, to make sure you get all the functions that you're meant to from a council. The feedback from the last few years is that that is not happening properly. So I'm willing to put up my hand to make those changes from the top to make things work out better. At the end of the day, you are a leader as a mayor. You're not the CEO or the boss. You bring a team in with you and you make changes, and you do that by leading with the standards you would expect, and I expect high standards. Thank you. My name is Craig Lord.
Thank you, Craig. Wayne.
Kia ora tātou. 12 years ago, the Super City was brought into shape, running from Wellsford, who never thought they were part of Auckland, down to Pukekohe, who didn't want to be part of Auckland. At the same time, they promised savings, efficiencies and a better relationship with the ratepayers. But none of that happened. Instead, what we got was delays to all of our projects, cost overruns everywhere, an explosion in staff numbers, mostly in the upper middle management, who are currently paid 30% above the marketplace, and a great lift in debt to perilous levels. We have CCOs which are largely out of control, and so I want to get stuck in and fix Auckland. I'm an infrastructure engineer, so I know about these things, and I have a good track record of fixing big, complex organisations, particularly in Auckland. Starting with Vector, who made the city famous by turning the power off for 6 weeks, where I was brought in as an engineer to restore that power and turn a $180 million loss into a $180 million profit. That was followed by the Auckland City Hospital, $500 million project, which was brought in on time and on budget, which I'm quite proud of, and you can compare that with the City Rail link at the moment, where they don't know how much it's going to cost, when it's going to finish, and you're all up for the costs overruns on that. For every $1 billion that runs up, that's $500 per ratepayer. I also fixed Transpower as well, having predicted to be a failure. So what I want to do is finish all the projects, clear the streets of all the debris from construction, finish the eastern and western busways, stop wasting money, bring back control of the CCOs and focus on the numbers. If you don't focus on the numbers, you'll hurt the people at the bottom, and the other reason to focus on the numbers so we can get our control of finances back, so we can buy and build the things that we really want, not what we're told from Wellington. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Viv.
Can you hear me? How about that?
Yes.
Yeah. Tēnā koutou katoa. We live in a magnificent place, and when my parents migrated here many years ago, they truly thought they came to paradise. And over the last few months, I've spent many hours talking to people across the region to understand what's on their mind. We're coming out of an extraordinary period with COVID, something that we hopefully won't face again in our lifetimes. There's a number of things on people's mind: cost of living, climate change, but the four most consistent issues were transport and congestion, crime, housing and infrastructure, and accountability of Auckland Council, and in particular, Auckland Transport. So my policies are focused on addressing those issues, because I think to really move forward, we actually have to make sure we've got a safe, connected place with people housed, and that they feel they're getting value for money and the right services provided from council. So that has been a lot of my campaign, is the policy work to address those key issues. The other thing I'd like to talk about is the leadership style to actually get things done and keep building the city we all want to live in. And I think it's really important that we do have a very constructive, collaborative leader who cares deeply about the people, who can work well with the councillors who are elected representatives, drive high performance through council, work constructively with government to actually deliver on the things that do need to be addressed. But it's way more than just fixing things, in my view. We want to build a resilient, connected, vibrant and inclusive city. And I think to do that, we have to care a lot about people. And that's really at the heart of my campaign.
Thank you all. Your timing actually is impeccable. Everybody got there within the minutes, so well done. Let's crack on to some questions now. The first topic for our Q&A, and remember, we do want constructive interchange, if that's what you primed for. The first subject is your personal and political attributes of leadership. And the first person I'm questioning is Wayne Brown. Wayne, some might see you as a solution in search of a problem. You say you're going to fix Auckland, but what's actually broken? What specific fix is your first priority if you win the election?
I think the first priority is to concentrate and put... Oh, sorry about that. First priority is to pick up the bloody speaker. First priority is to really put some urgency into our major projects. The City Rail Link needs to, and the eastern and western busways need to be urgently pushed ahead. We need to clear the city of the cones and the debris that's stopping circulation. The council allow contractors to invade public space without care or cost. That has to stop. Most of what's preventing customers there is just in behind those safety fences is staff lunchrooms, toilets and utes, which shouldn't be there. So that will make an immediate change, plus get on top of exactly what the finances are. They've been papered over. We don't know what the CRL is going to cost us, and they won't tell us, and that's not good news. And we don't know quite whether or not we have sold or not sold water care.
Right, we'll come to the financial things a bit later on. Efeso, yeah, we will get to it, absolutely. Efeso Collins, you've been a councillor with Phil Goff for 2 terms, and during this campaign, you and the others will have heard a lot from around the place. These words like broken and bloated and racking up debt and failing to address problems. As someone on the inside, how do you answer that?
I think it's been popular for people to throw those kinds of labels around at a council that in the last term of council has saved $450 million. Over the last 10 years, we've saved $2 billion. I think this is a council that's been extremely prudent and responsible. Is there room for efficiencies? Of course there is. There's always got to be room for us to make sure that we're dealing with any fat that is there. We have a value for money committee, and that committee's been laser focused on ensuring that there is no wastage, and then where there is, let's focus on it. And I believe that we've been very responsible as a council. We've got a AA rating from Standard & Poor's, and yet we've got people who are throwing things around like we're broken, we're broke, and all that kind of stuff. Those are not labels that are applicable or can be applied to this council. And so I reject those labels. But having said that, there's still room for us to be focused on where we can get savings.
So if you've signed up for all those measures, do you go into this campaign saying, I'm just going to hold the line and keep things as they are?
No, not at all, because we're a developing city. There's huge infrastructure that we need. It's not just the CRL. It would have been nice, Wayne, if you came to the visit today, because you would have got some good insight, but you decided not to. But given what we can see and the information that we're getting, this is not about holding the line. This is about ensuring that the future of the city is going to be sustainable. People are paying a climate action targeted rate that was supported by 68% of Aucklanders. And that targeted rate is going to ensure we're going to have more electric buses. We're going to have faster networks, over 70 faster networks. We're going to make sure we're electrifying our fleet. That is what we're looking forward to. This city is going to grow. We're at 2.4 million people in 18 years. We can't just hold the line. Holding the line is not the way forward.
Okay. Turning to Viv Beck. Viv, it's been a full week since a couple of blocks from here you promised soon to respond publicly in writing to the controversy over your campaign debts and some negative messaging. That's been 168 hours without a follow-up, so in the interest of clearing the air early in this debate, we're willing to offer you this platform to explain those issues.
I'll say what I can. I mean, the first thing is that the invoices are not to me, and it has been a commercial disagreement about invoices, so it's very unfortunate to have it in the public arena at this time in the campaign when efforts have been made to resolve the issue. And there's not much more I can say. I mean, I'm not going to talk further about the parties while this is being worked through.
But you said last week you would be doing it soon. Has there been a problem since then, further issues?
No, I think it's just a question of judgment as to what to say and when to say it. But the thing I have said is that this is not debt that I have personally incurred.
Do you think it'll be cleared up before people start voting in a week's time?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Craig Lord, you're back. A second mayoral campaign with a reasonably strong profile and a platform here to sell your ideas. You've said it was a 4-year job application, but where have you been for sort of the last 3 years between these elections? And what have you been doing to offer a sort of better Craig Lord to the voters from 3 years ago?
Well, that's a unique question. What have I been doing for 3 years is what you're saying? Working, earning money to pay the bills at home.
No, that's good, but you've termed it as a 4-year job application.
Yes.
As if you've been working from A to B to get here.
Correct.
So what have you done with public Auckland issues or your involvement in the community in that sense?
Well, I haven't been in council, so everything's been on the outside. And the campaign hasn't stopped. In fact, if you're keen enough, you could scroll through social media and see 4 years of comments, opinions, ideas, and suggestions. Yeah, and you're still awake.
No, I did, and there's a big gap from 2019, monthly blog posts by you, and then there's only 2 in 2020.
Oh, no,
none in 2021,
looking at the wrong place.
And you've come back this year with a blast.
Yeah, I think more importantly, we should be talking about my policies and what I want to bring to Auckland rather than what I've been doing for 3 years.
Okay, what are you bringing this time that's different from last time?
A lot more experience and conversation with people out there in the real world, and also some more refined policies. That's a big one. And would you like to hear a couple?
Yeah, give me the one that you think is your signature policy.
There's two.
Right.
The first one is what was suggested by the Royal Commission in 2009 when they created the Super City, and it has not been done. And that is bringing in an independent performance and service auditor, the watchdog for Auckland Council. The Royal Commission said do it, and no mayor has done it. I am going to do that. Auckland deserves to have a watchdog inside council to help sort out the issues. The second part is I want to try and completely overhaul the preferred contractor system.
We're going to get to that truly in
so
the finance section later on, but
yes.
we'll get back
so there they are.
Okay.
Hasn't taken 3 years to work those out though.
All right. To all of you, just a general question on your campaign so far. You've all done plenty of events. There have been business groups and Rotary and universities and central city gatherings like this. I know you've got, tomorrow morning, you've got the business group as well. Have you, though, reached out far enough to those who are perhaps least aware, least motivated to get involved and to vote? Is there a way in Auckland to reach people and to go forward? Viv first.
Well, it is a challenge with nearly 1.7 million people, and we can make our own sort of choices as to how we do this. Obviously, media and social media is one way, and getting out and about as much as we can in the community. So I think realistically, you don't get to talk to 1.7 million people, so you can only do your best to get your message out as best you can. But I think it's an important point, because what astounds me is how little interest there is in voting in local government elections, and yet it is so fundamentally important to people's day-to-day lives. So I've been pretty heartened with the conversations I've had with people and the interest that those people have expressed, and it's great to see so many of you here tonight. And I understand there's a lot more debates than normal, so that's a good thing. But I think, are we getting to all the people out there? No, but we're certainly doing our best.
Wayne Brown, do you believe you've been able to reach out to groups perhaps that need to be brought into the democratic process to get that 35% sort of voting rate up?
Well, pretty well. I mean, a quarter of our population now, what we broadly call Asian, Chinese and Indian being the largest two groups of those, and I've gone out of my way to be involved with that group because they're a great set of our citizens. They work hard, raise their children to be educated, a bit like our parents did it for our generation, and they're not seen in the similar numbers in council organisations. They're not seen sufficient numbers in the business associations, they're not seen in similar numbers on the community boards, and so I've made a big effort to encourage them to do that. And they're great people to talk to. They're quite transactional. They're really only interested in whether they really want a businessman in charge. They're not too fussed about policies. They're quite simple. I like them.
Thank you. We have another businessman here. Craig Lord, have you found that you've been able to reach other groups, and do you think you'll bring more voters to the table this time?
Yeah, I do. There's 4 ways that people know. It's via the media, spending a ton of money on ads, going out and meeting people, or social media. Those are your 4 that you use. And I use 2 of them that I think I use them reasonably well: social media and going out and seeing people. And the social media has been fantastic over the last 3 years, because the feedback I'm getting is people saying, I've never bothered voting before, I'm going to this time. And every time I see that, and it's done in different formats, they're saying it, but they're saying the same thing. There's more people now who are interested, and that is a good thing.
Efeso Collins, are you seeing that? Do you feel that more people will come out? And do you think you've been able to reach beyond the sort of the standard local government groupings?
Look, since the end of May, I've done 57 events now, including, I think we've done maybe 25, 26 debates like this, plus the other things I've organised. Last night, after our mayoral discussion over at KPMG, I went to a youth forum as well. So we've got to do everything possible. But I think the question needs to be reframed slightly, because I don't think the onus is on us as the candidates to reach everybody. Yeah, we need to reach everybody, and I feel like we're meeting 1 million people in groups of 40 bar tonight, and that's part of the challenge. I think the media really need to stand up. We don't get the 1 p.m. presser that Wellington gets. We're not on the news every Tuesday on breakfast or something. Well, I am, yeah, so that's a wonderful advantage. Although they stopped the breakfast thing, I was really upset with the AM show because they said to me I couldn't come back. But that's where the media need to step in, and they've got to play their role too. And I think the other thing I'm really cognizant of is, if you look at the voting data, it matches the very data of this university that I used to work for, is that participation levels, if you own a house, you tend to vote, and if you don't own a house, you tend not to vote. No different for this university. If you're from a low decile school, you won't come to this university, because I worked here for 15 years, and if you come from a wealthy school, you're going to come to this university. All of that, our society is replicating itself through education, and then it's showing up because we're not participating in this level of society, so people are disenfranchised early on into the voting system.
But do you feel that you've made a difference in reaching out to...
Oh, you bet I do.
Okay.
Hey. Yeah.
Okay, we promised a quick fire round just to relieve the wordage as we go along. The first of these, I'm going to ask you all, starting with Efeso and going this way, to name a mayor in Auckland or elsewhere who has impressed you and could be a role model for you as mayor.
Sir Bob Harvey.
Who's in our audience tonight.
Oh, kia ora,
Welcome,
Sir
Sir
Bob. I
Bob.
didn't realise you were here. Kia ora, matua.
Craig Lord.
Robbie. Yeah, there we go. Robbie.
Dove Meyer, Robson. Yeah.
Well, I've had recent experience with Bob Harvey too, but I haven't actually worked with him. So who I would say is Kerry Prendergast in Wellington. She was an excellent mayor to work with, no nonsense, got the job done.
Good.
That's the model.
Thank you. Now, moving now to our next topic, which is transport, one of the sort of the critical pillars, I guess, of all of your campaigns. We have one question that'll go to all of you, which is, Auckland's population, as Efeso said earlier, is projected to grow by 40% to 2.3 million over the next 25 years. What transport options and networks will be needed to shift that many people? And as Mayor, how will you start delivering them? Viv Beck.
Okay, so I am a supporter of public transport. I'm not supporting the light rail. What I want to see is actually faster rollout of rapid transit, and I'm proposing that we go back to the idea that was on the table before the light rail, and that emulates the success of the Northern Busway, because I know people who've got out of their cars to get that bus because it gets them where they need to go when they need to get there. So I want to see the rapid transit bus network implemented out west, out to Westgate, where there's a lot of growth. I want to see the buses from Botany to the airport, where there's a lot of jobs around that area, improvements through the Isthmus and improvements through the Northern Busway, so that within a decade we actually have a reliable public transport network that can get people out of cars. Can I keep going? How long have I got?
No, are you okay?
Good. Okay, so that's a key part of my transport plan. So that gives us flexibility to see how the COVID changes play out, and also, this is slipping around, and also technology. What are we going to be doing in 10 years? Will we be in autonomous e-vehicles that, you use an app to pick you up? It gives us flexibility, and we will have those separated spaces that could be used for other things. If the demand warrants it, we might put light rail in the Isthmus. But right now, that'll get us moving faster, and it will enable us.
I was going to say, if I can bump in, some of the things you've said are very good and laudable, but aren't most of them underway already? Hasn't this council's plan, what's brand new that you're going to do?
Well, I'm saying within a decade have a rapid transit network that is affordable. It's a lot less money to do this, and it will get people out of their cars, and I think that's a really positive thing to do. And I would say that the reason I think we need to do that is, my view on the free public transport is make it available free for the over 65s, students and the community card holders, so people who really could benefit from it. But the evidence is that if you make it free for everyone, it takes money away from the ability to get the rapid transit in. So I'd rather see, the research says if you have a transport system that people are going to use, that's going to get people out of their cars.
Okay, thank you. Wayne Brown.
Okay, as I said before, you've got to put real pressure on, finish the CRL and the eastern and western busways and see what they do. In terms of speeding up transport and shifting people onto buses, and I use my AT card, and as a little example from here, currently if you catch a bus up Queen Street, it's quicker to walk. And that's because our signal system is particularly dumb in New Zealand. We don't connect our lights to the buses, and overseas I'd like to put transponders on the buses so that when they come to the lights know there's a bus there, it goes green and they can go through. And at the moment, if you're coming in on Dominion Road or any of those other feeders, you stop at the bus stops at the same red lights as you do, so just to save a few dollars, you're not going to get out of your car. But if the bus can go through all the red lights and you don't, and you suddenly notice that they're 5 kilometres ahead of you, you'll think about, maybe I'm in the wrong mode. We in the modern broadcast area, we should be able to connect all of our signal network so that you don't wait when you turn left. There'll be a camera that tells you no one's crossing, so you can get on with the job. We are a long way short of getting the full capacity down the roads that we've got now, and that means an introduction of IT, which is generally quite inexpensive in comparison with more roads and things. So brain up the system first.
But
of
are
all.
these things increments? You know, we're looking at 40%, population gain, traffic lights that listen to buses and all that stuff, and it's good, but you can imagine it would improve things a bit, and I think Viv Beck has sort of, smoother traffic lights in your policy as well.
Well,
but they're not going to move, are they? Are they not going to do what we need for a population growing that far?
Well, I don't think 4 million people, 2.4 million people are all going to want to come in the city. And we're going to be I was in Papatodio the other day, and we went to every shop, and not one of those people have been to the city in the last year, nor have any intention of coming to the city. People will be in satellites, and they will tend to congregate more to those areas. And so speeding up and getting the maximum out of the investment that you've already got with the roads is a damn sensible thing to do. And it also highlights exactly what it is that you want next. And as far as that goes, Aucklanders need to decide what it is we're doing next, not some group from Wellington. We've got 40 MPs here. They're going to be told, you're an Auckland MP, your job is to go to Wellington and come back with the money, not to come back with instructions about what we want.
They're going to be told. Craig Lord.
Well, I think a little bit differently on transport to what a lot of others do. The first question we have to ask is, where do people want to go? Because everyone has been speaking for years about how do we get people in and out of the CBD more efficiently. Well, why? People don't go shopping there anymore. What are they going there for? So we've got to have that discussion to determine how many people go in there. COVID proved that businesses are now going to operate in satellite areas around Auckland, and people are not going en masse in and out of the CBD anymore. So that's the first part of it. The second problem we've got with mass transport in Auckland is our topography. Our layout in Auckland is not right set up for mass transport, and that is a major problem. And I do not blame Auckland Transport for a lot of that. They've got real issues to deal with.
You'd be the only one who doesn't.
Well, they've got other issues. When they plan out a map and a route for a bus or a train, they go, well, how many houses are we going to wipe out to put this in? They're doing that on the east-west, on the east to central bus link now. They're talking about a scorched earth policy on 30-odd properties because they want to change where the bus goes. That's going to happen all over Auckland if we want to put in mass transport on the ground. Now, I know it's a wild idea and people keep going Simpsons monorail, but I still think it's about time we got a bit smarter and went above ground. Now, modern technology is not monorail anymore. And around the world, they are building proper systems above ground in European and Asian countries that are high-tech, electronic, and you can move mass people around on pillars. And that's probably the way we're going to do it. Otherwise, what else do we do? The sprawl of Auckland is not designed for mass transport at ground level.
Thank you. We're open to wild ideas. Efeso Collins.
Yeah, my flagship policy has been fair, free public transport. It's supported by 73% of Aucklanders, and what it does is it takes away the price impediment for people to be able to get on the bus. We know from the Helen Clark Foundation that for some families, 30% of their income is going towards transport, and so you take that away, that addresses the cost of living crisis that we're in at the moment, gets people out of their cars. The research that I'm aware of, and that was produced by Professor Jen MacArthur of the University College in London, so it makes it very clear that you help people get out of their cars by being able to access public transport. Alongside that, I want safe, protected cycleways, and we've got to do better. We've got to move people into feeling like they're safe on being able to cycle. I've also, in my transport policy, I support the idea of a trial over the Harbour Bridge and surrendering a lane so that we can get people walking and cycling over the Harbour Bridge. And finally, I've also got a policy that's going to ensure that we've got an active modes senior advisor that's connected to the Mayor's office, because we've got to seriously focus on the shift in all modes of transport, not just getting people out of their cars to the bus, but moving them into bikes as well, because we know that a high number of our vehicle travel is under 6 kilometres. And so if we can cycle safely to school, we can drop the kids off at school, then that's going to happen. 56% of Aucklanders said they would cycle more if it was safe and protected, and that's what we've got to do.
I want to come back on this.
Quickly.
All right. Bike Auckland admitted they've got no idea how many people would want to use the bridge to go across and back. So instead of shutting down a lane, why don't we do trials? We can set up vans and buses with bike racks, find out how many people realistically want to use the bridge to get across, instead of guessing. Because at the moment you're guessing. And I do not agree with guesswork. Let's get some empirical data by doing a 6-month trial.
And that's what I've said. In the policy, I've said a trial.
In buses and in vans,
you wanna
not
let
giving them a
people
lane
cycle.
on a push
No.
bike. That's just
You wanna let
ridiculous.
people cycle. People want to cycle over the bridge.
They don't, and your numbers are fudged.
They do.
Yes, the less than 1% do. We get that. And here is the 1% of Auckland that wants to do it. The 1%.
I hate to admit it, but I actually like to ride my bike in town.
There you go.
I rode the bike. I rode the bike down around West Haven on Sunday, had a beer at Swashbucklers, and pedalled back up Nelson Street. I like to do that a lot, and I'm in favour of cycleways at sensible prices. You can build cycleways for $300 a metre. That makes a lot of sense. You can build them at $22,000 a metre like K Road, and that doesn't make much sense at all. So it's sensible prices for things make sense.
All right. Before we just quickly move to climate policies, which are so closely aligned to all that, another quick-fire question. Would any of you reintroduce Len Brown's famous direct community consultation in public places, the mayor and the chair?
Yeah, I announced I would months ago.
You have? Yep. In a chair or on some other
Yeah, I did.
device?
I said that was one of his probably only good things I liked. He did the mayor and the chair, and I want to add to that the local boards. They should be doing pop-ups as well.
Viv Beck, you do it?
Yeah, no,
Wayne, would you see yourself sitting in a chair listening to the average hoi polloi?
I think that's a bit rough on the public. I think that speaking to groups that represent things is a very important thing. He spoke to the Otahu Business Association, of which I'm a member, and what I liked about Len, he was prepared to change his mind, and which is a good indication. He came out there to tell us about the new railway station out there and what a great idea it was, and we all agreed with that. And then he said, it's such a good idea, we're going to put a whole lot of shops down there. And I said, well, hang on, mate. It's the shopkeepers in town that are rating to pay for this, and so you're going to set up a whole lot of ratepayer-funded competitors to the company, to the people.
So this is a quick fire thing. So
and he said he changed his mind.
Thank you. Efeso Collins.
Absolutely, and I do it at the moment. When you visit your local councillor, you can do that, and I do that in the library. So yes, the mayor and the chair were going ahead with it.
Very good. On to climate action. The council has already formed a pretty cohesive plan. And it's tightly linked to transport policies because transport is 40% of emissions. Again, a question to all of you. If, as mayor, can you name your 3 top climate actions? And we'll go from Efeso across this way.
So I've talked about fares free. We're getting people out of their cars onto walking and cycling. So fares free is going to address that. Yep. So I've also called for a mayor's coalition on how we're going to advocate to the Crown to make sure we get money back from the GST we pay on rates to go towards climate action and urban ngahere. And I know that's already in Te Tawhiria Taruke, but we've got to ensure that we're planting. We've got more canopy cover because we know that in poorer areas of the city, there's canopy covers only 8%, and we want to get it right up to 30% so it's general across the city. So those will be key areas for me.
Okay, Craig Lord. 3 top climate actions that could make a difference.
No.
None?
Nope. You know my stance on climate, and everybody who's watching on, and a few there here won't, so let me explain to it.
Sure.
I disagree with the numbers that have been presented for the plan by Auckland Council. I do not think that those numbers are what we should be concerned about. Now, you said 45%, wasn't it?
40% of transport emissions.
Yes, but 40% of what? 0.17% of New Zealand, which means what is Auckland? We're 0.06%. So when people throw around 40%, they start to go, oh no, here we go. We've got problems. It's not that at all. Now, what we do in here to New Zealand, and I'm not a denier, so anybody who's go, here we go, Craig's a climate denier. I am not. I know that humans are bad for the planet. We have done a lot of bad things, but I will not run around in little circles yelling out the sky is falling just because we are told by places like the UN that we should be.
What about if the
and
sea
I
is
will
rising?
not do that. The sea is, no, sorry, no. I'm not going to go out and build seawalls. What we should be is mitigating these problems. Auckland Council admitted that Kumeu flooded because they did not do the maintenance. Sure. That's what we should be focusing on, the maintenance that mitigates the problems that are already here, because our tiny percentage in New Zealand that we change, those few cars, is not going to affect the world's climate change. It is not.
So you have micro responses to what you regard as a micro impact.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
You've got it.
Wayne Brown, you've said, I think, that mitigation and preparing is an important
Well,
response.
I think the first thing I'd do is shift all of the containers from the wharf on trains rather than trucks. That gets rid of the trucks out of the city. And 150 containers on a train only uses the same diesel as 27 trucks, so you get win-win-win there. Second thing I'd do is, as I say, brain up the buses so they're more appealing to get people onto them, and so they speed through the red lights and they go faster, and that will shift people. Costs not much to do that. And the third thing is get a very clear assessment of exactly which parts of the city will be worst damaged by increased floods and adverse weather events, and concentrate the money there. Part of the money there. I think the council made a brave decision to put aside a large sum for this, and we should maximise the benefit that we can get from it.
Okay, thank you. Viv Beck, what are the 3 actions in climate, not just in transport, but over climate action that you would prioritise?
So for me, it's about electrifying the fleet and getting those buses. I know it's in there, but I'm not sure it's fully funded. It's 177 million, as I understand it, to actually get that fleet electrified by 2030, and making sure we've got infrastructure to support the migration of vehicles to low and no emission vehicles. So that's a big one for me. I think it's, I am actually, this mitigation is important as well. I have been out to Howick and seen some of the challenges there. I think we do need to be focusing on areas at most risk. I've got some policies around cycling, like making it safer for kids to walk and cycle to school, I think is an important one. Actually, I'm probably up to 3. I've got several. I'm interested in the trees as well.
3 will do us for now, thank you. I'm going to just change focus a little here, and
We wouldn't have to plant trees all the time if council stopped chopping down thousands of them every year.
fair enough. Turning now to just an allied but a different topic is partnership with Maori from the council, the co-governance and relationships with mana whenua. Viv Beck, if I can start with you, I was interested in a social media post of yours the other day. It was a bright illustrated graphic with the title "Enough is Enough." And leaving aside the Brian Tamaki kind of echoes from that title, you had 3 things that you, or we, supposedly had enough of, and they were cycle lanes, pedestrianisation, and co-governance. On the co-governance, what did that mean? What have you had enough of?
Well, this has actually come about from all of those visits around the region. These are really hot topics for people, and it's not because it's because people feel like they're being foisted on them, and this gets to the heart of why I'm standing, actually, because communities are disconnected. Now, I disagree with those figures that 73% of Aucklanders want free transport. It's 73% of 775 people or something. So, let's be clear that it's people that respond to a survey.
Sorry, I'm not asking about the pedestrianisation and
I'm
the
just saying
cycleways. I'm asking about co-governance.
Yeah, so people are angry about, there are many people who are angry about co-governance. They feel it's just been foisted on us from Wellington. It hasn't been consulted on. It's just basically something that it's undemocratic to a lot of people, and I'm worried about it because I think it's going to divide us. It is dividing us. People want to know, they're saying to us, who stands for co-governance and who doesn't. Now, I have been supportive of settling treaty grievances, and I think there are some co-management arrangements that have been set up that are working successfully, like, Urawera Forest and Lake Taupo, and all of those things work well. I think the problem with this is that it is coming across to people as a significant change that is not democratic, and I'm concerned about that because I think if we push this too far, we're going to end up more divided than we are as a result of the last few years.
But how does that come into the Auckland context when you say it's been foisted on us from Wellington? What's been foisted on
Well,
Auckland?
the three waters, and it's the co-governance with the three
So
waters.
it's one
that it's
aspect. The three waters is what you're focused on.
Sorry?
When you say you're against co-governance,
What I'm saying
it's
is
three
people
waters.
are concerned about three waters and the co-governance that goes. That's what's brought this out into the fore.
Okay, thank you. Wayne Brown.
Right, well, when they set up the super city, the legislation includes quite a bit of co-governance. We've got co-governance of volcanoes, of parts of the Hauraki Gulf. And so I'm just standing to be the mayor, not the Prime Minister. And so you make the best of what we've got. We've got those co-governances, they're working all right, work with them. There are one or two things that suit it and some things that don't. I think the three waters, I'm against that because it's not a good idea in the first place. So I'm not, and co-governance of a whole lot of valves and pipes and technical engineering things is probably not a good idea. But co-governance of things where the iwi have got a long, strong interest in them, like the Monga and the harbour, that's the rules, and we'll do the best with it. I don't have a problem with that.
Thank you. Craig Lord. Co-governance, what exists already, are you supportive of? Is there a sort of an opportunity to extend into other areas? And three waters, where do you sit on that?
Three waters, I disagree with the three waters process that is going through, and I will be offering that money back to the government that they gave to Phil Goff, and he took apparently no strings attached. I just don't believe that.
I think it's already been spent in the budget.
Yeah, and there we go. So it's already been allocated and spent, but we're not going to agree to three waters. Yeah, good one. In regards to co-governance, my personal opinion is I don't like it. I don't believe in co-governance that is not voted or is race-based. I do not like race-based policies, and I do not like the fact that you have a governance decided by a DNA trait. If you are going for advisors and you are going for consultation and you want to get opinions from any other culture or religion, you can do that as advisors and consultation. But co-governance means that you are putting someone into a position to govern something and they have not been voted in by the people, and that is not fair.
Well,
that is a divisive way, and it's time we grew up in New Zealand and said we want someone to govern this entity. They all get voted in, not some of them.
But the premise is that tangata whenua are beyond just being representative of a group of different types of people in New Zealand. They're the people who were of the land originally. And that's why the co-governance is there in this model. It's not just any different ethnicity.
I do not agree with anything that is a race-based policy or a governance that is determined by race. That is wrong.
You've had your say. Efeso Collins, and you've been on a council that's worked with, obviously, the Independent Maori Statutory Board, the Monga Authority and others in various kind of iterations of this. Where do you stand on the three waters system that is expected to come through?
Yeah, I'm supportive of three waters to the extent that we get economies of scale, we've got professional services, and we know the plans from three waters means that we're going to be able to procure locally. Watercare's done a fantastic job for Auckland, and becoming part of the four entities I think is a good way forward. The part of co-governance, I'm a real believer in co-governance. Like you said, we've got the IMSB, the Gulf Harbour Forum, Tupuna Maunga Authority. Co-governance works, and I'd invite some of my panellists to read the work of Chris Finlayson, because he outlines how co-governance works really well for our nation. I think part of it is a maturing issue for the city, and accepting that if we're going to be true to the Treaty of Waitangi, which is a document that's foundational to our nation, that will understand what partnership looks like. And this is one way where we're applying principles of partnership. Where I think Auckland is concerned, because we've got the feedback from 78% of people who came back to us when we consulted, is that we own 94% of the infrastructure assets in relation to three waters, but we're only getting 28% of the say. So when we correct that imbalance on behalf of Aucklanders, I think the rest of it is okay. But that's that part of it. That's the element of it that people are unhappy with in Auckland. It's not the rest of it. And I think we've got to move forward. Let's grow up as a city.
Thank you. A very quick fire question. A waterfront stadium, should we be considering it?
No.
No.
Well, we've got empty stadiums everywhere. And if the All Blacks don't get better, well, even my Eden Park might be.
Quick fire.
What was the question?
A waterfront stadium, should we be considering it?
No,
There's
probably not now.
You're not going to have a waterfront stadium, Auckland. Okay. Our next topic is the city's finances and the economy and the budget, how to budget out of the pandemic and beyond. Wayne Brown, I'm going to start with you. You've said you've had forensic accountants going through the city's finances to try to work out how badly the council's performing and what risk there might be to ratepayers. What have you found?
Well, it's complicated. It's complicated. They're not easy to read. There's inclusions of CCOs in some parts and exclusions of CCOs in others. There's not even a fully agreed total of the debt, whoever you talk to. What we've found is a whole lot of things creep through that even the people watching don't know. For instance, there's a lot of staff leave and are immediately re-employed on much higher contract rates that none of the councillors knew about. We've found that at one stage, in 1 month, they spent $7 million on furniture, which is enough to buy seats for about 40,000 people. And there's only 10,000 of them, and some of them are supposed to be standing up, and nobody noticed that. And so it's very easy to gloss over things. It's very easy to have that presented to a council in a manner they don't fully understand, and it's very easy for the councillors to rely on somebody else to think everything's okay. And then when you get to the big things, I still can't believe that we don't know what's going on at the CRL. When we ran the hospital build, that $500 million build, I knew the cost of that every week, and the board knew it every month. And it's a disgrace to find that no one knows that and just blame COVID.
And we've heard a bit about that before. Efeso Collins, rates rises haven't been discussed much in this campaign, but you have, I think, to the average person, average reader or viewer or ratepayer, a curious sounding policy, which sort of reframes it as a rates affordability as a percentage of income. Certainly Wayne Brown thinks that's code for bigger rate rises. What is it that you mean? And actually, are bigger rate rises what Auckland actually does need to get itself out of the hole?
Yeah, look, we're paying a climate action targeted rate. So in a way, people have committed to paying a bit more so that we can achieve things for the city. When I talk about the affordability measure, what I'm saying is that benchmark or that modelling is so that people aren't paying over a certain amount of their income, which is 5% that they set, as a fair amount or an affordable amount. I'm not going to be raising rates to that amount. What I've said is I'm comfortable with where we sit at the moment. I agreed in the long-term process to the 3.5% that we've agreed to, and are happy to stay there for year one. I also agreed to the emergency budget when we lifted rates for 1 year by 5% because we had to. We'd lost nearly $1 billion in revenue. So I think what's important here is that we understand that rates is one lever of 4 that we can pull, and what we've got to do when we get to the long-term plan process is present to Auckland as here's our vision, and these are the ways in which we'll pay for the vision. Do we increase the rates? Are we going to slow down our projects, which is deferrals? Are we going to lose more jobs because we've lost 500 jobs at council, and those are efficiencies? And are we going to borrow more? So there are 4 levers, but for some reason, Wayne's getting caught up in what he thinks I'm thinking. He's not going to understand what my brain is thinking, because I'm going to go with the 4 levers, and that's an honest approach to Auckland, not making up figures that, the debt is actually 12 billion, Wayne. When you look at the figures properly, I can tell you it, and our debt to asset ratio is 18%. We should be proud of the prudence of Auckland Council, not just making up scaremongering figures, which is what you're doing.
Thank you. Just a quick response.
Now, I can find people in there who say it's $16 billion, but just going back to the thing how hard it is, when the savings are claimed quite regularly by the current council, but most of those are in fact all deferrals. It's not a deferral, it's not a saving if you just put off doing something that you're going to have to do until next year. And so it's easy to confuse people by claiming things which are not exactly savings. If there were savings, costs would be going down, but they inexorably go up.
Okay, thank you. Viv Beck, your policy on financial matters on your website is headlined Better Value for Money, and talks about cutting waste at the council and delivering the right services for communities within budget. while other policies on your site have a button to learn more, that's not available for this policy.
Sorry, I can't hear you very well here.
Sorry, your policy on your site doesn't have a learn more button about your financial
Oh no, because
policies.
we're only just releasing it.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I'd like to learn more. What actions will you take to put things right?
Yeah.
And how much needs to be cut?
Yeah. So I think things actually go wrong right at the start, because you wouldn't travel around the region and hear everywhere you go examples of waste and concern if there wasn't an issue. And it comes back to that point I made at the beginning. I think things often go wrong at the start in terms of engaging with communities, what is going to happen and why and when. And so people have got examples of projects that have gone in, there's been an uproar from the locals and it comes out, or something that happens and then somebody else, one of the other CCOs comes in and something else, another piece of work happens. There is waste and people are not seeing the value for money for their rates. That's a problem. I actually think we have to review how the rates work. People are looking for fairness, more transparency, and at the moment there are people out there who are on fixed incomes. One woman told me she'd had nearly a 50% increase in rates, and she was distraught because she actually is on a fixed income and didn't know how she was going to pay for it. These are common stories. There is something that needs to be addressed, and I'm getting examples of waste all the time, and I see them myself. So there is waste to come out.
So it's anecdotal. You've heard it from lots of people, so you're assuming it is so?
Well, I mean, I've seen it myself, and I've seen anecdotal example. Of course, we're not in there.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I don't think Aucklanders are silly. You know, at the end of the day, when they see something happening in their community, they are giving feedback in good faith, and these are smart, intelligent people. They're connected to their communities, and why would we not believe that?
Sure. Craig Lord, I think your central policy, you mentioned earlier, it was the second of the two things you raised earlier, is to look at a commitment to reviewing the way the council uses contractors and purchasing, I think. How much of a difference could that make to a budget that is under strain, and what does it actually mean?
Okay, so currently we give out our maintenance contracts to the big companies, the big corporates, and then they subcontract it out to all the smaller ones down and down and down, and the big dollars go overseas. So what we've got to do is change the way that we work this out and start going back to almost, for description, the old borough council style of procedure. So what we have to do is have local contractors working in local regions. Now, the first thing that does is it puts pride in the work, because the local contractors who live around that area are going to be doing the work. We pay those local contractors directly, not a parent company, them. We also make sure they have clauses in their contracts that their workers are receiving the living wage. We do all those sort of little things. We spread the wealth amongst the community rather than going to the giant corporates overseas. Now, if we can then trim that into the local boards who can make a network, they can find all the local contractors to make them meet a warrant of fitness grade, meet our health and safety, meet our standards we want, pay a proper price for a proper job and not an overpriced job, which is what is happening at the moment. But look, there's two perfect examples really quickly. The first one was the glazier that I found out was doing the jobs of repairing council broken glass in buildings in Warkworth, was based in Pukekohe. And we're paying to send that glazier all the way up there. It's not like they don't have glaziers up there. And that might be a little thing, but if you take care of the pennies, the pounds will take care of themselves. And the other one is the likes of the new, and I'll use Wellsford as an example, $1.3 million was just spent on a new public toilet block. 1.3 million. That's 2 houses. And they spent that, and it was made by a company in Gisborne. I mean, where's the common sense here? We've got to change the inefficient way that we operate. Council is meant to be a service provider. Let's do it.
Okay. A final quick fire from me, and then we're going to move to audience questions, which you'll be waiting for. Just a quick one then. Where would you stand, from Viv at the start, going this way, where would you stand on any move to restore the city's formal name to Tamaki Makaurau? For or against?
To have it on its own. I think I wouldn't support on its own.
Wayne Brown.
I'd like to restore City of Sales instead of whatever the current What are we, the little big city or something or other?
Me personally, no, but if the Auckland population want to, then that's what they want.
Professor Collins.
In encouraging our bilingual policy, Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, yes.
I'm okay with that.
Right, we do have now time for questions from the audience. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand for a microphone. There'll be roving microphones. Give us your name and a concise question with a question mark at the end. Who'd like to be first, please?
Life's unbelievable, isn't it?
Oh, sorry, Vanita, have you got someone? Yeah. Up the back.
Hi, my name is Nick. I have a question for Efeso. If you've got a policy of free fares, public transport, and the City Rail Link is going to cost us $8 billion, how do you propose it be paid for?
I missed the detail in your question. I know you said fares free.
Sorry. If you've got a policy of fares free public transport and the City Rail Link has cost us $8 billion, how do you propose to pay for it if the fares are free for users on it?
Yeah, okay, well, the City Rail Link is very different, and then we're working alongside the Crown. That's going to be paid for. That's $14 billion. We're working with the Crown. They're paying that. That's essentially where that money's coming from. We can pay for fares-free public transport because given the range of estimates, I've settled on $236 million. We've got $1 billion worth of money within our ATAP at the moment. It's just reprioritising that, so that's where we're going to get the money. Some of those budgets include roading projects, which is $291 billion. You've got customer experience and efficiencies, IT, that's about $700 million. So the money is there, it can be paid for.
Kia ora koutou. My name's Matty Wall. I just want to ask you a question about this document, which is called Reimagining Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, and it was produced by Koitu, the Centre for Informed Futures, which is a think tank at the University of Auckland. Have you read it, each of you? And what, if you have, what is one thing that resonates for each of you from this document in terms of a good idea for the future?
Thank you. We'll go this way.
Yes, I have read the document, and one thing that sticks out for me is the Commission for Future Generations, where we've got people who are going to really think well together and see where we can uplift Auckland, get some real vision in the place.
Craig Lord, have you read it?
No, I haven't, but I'll have a copy if you've got one. Thank you.
Wayne Brown.
I've skimmed it and done the executive summary and other bits, and the bit that stood out for me is that it's 30 years away and they got paid quite a lot of money, and I wished I'd been paid to do something which is that far away that I'll be dead before they find out if I was right. But there's some good ideas in it.
Viv Beck.
Can I have two parts to this? In terms of aspirationally, I love the park idea, but the thing I was most focused on is how do we enable that change? And things like the citizens' assemblies are things I'm interested in, to how do we get the bit with the community right?
Kia ora, I have a question for Wayne. Kia ora, Wayne. I just saw you on Saturday. He was shopping at the markets, supposedly supporting the local businesses, which this question is towards those businesses. So after being voted out sweepingly, after your role at the Far North District Council, and after an Auditor General's report into the way that you handled your personal interests, will you continue your business activities as the Mayor of Auckland? And since you own a large amount of commercial properties, do you think there could be a risk of conflict of interest? And it's not a yes or no question.
You wouldn't possibly be in Efeso's team by any chance, would you? No. I served 2 terms up in Northland, and eventually everyone loses something or other, so don't feel bad about it. I'm very proud of the 2 terms that I did serve up there. In terms of, I do have properties across the North Island, not that many in Auckland actually.
So the first question was, will you continue your business activities as a Mayor of Auckland?
Yeah, of course I'll continue my business activities. Most of them don't require much time actually because they're commercial properties.
Does that play a big part into the way that you rock, like your...
No, not at all. No,
Is there a need to separate or obviously it'll be declared because that's declared as
Everything's
mayor.
fully declared.
Sure, but is there a way that you can separate off, you've got a full-time job, we expect, obviously it'll be a full-time job for you. Do you somehow move it off to others to look after those interests of yours?
Well, they're self-looking after now. I mean, they're tuning over quite nicely without me seeing them for the last 6 months. I've been clambering around day and night answering questions like that.
Up here.
Question for Viv Beck. Given that the government has said that it will pay for the rail link to the airport, I still have trouble understanding why, as mayor, you would be opposed to it. Given that the government has said that they will pay for the rail link to the airport, despite what you said before, I can't really understand why you would be opposed to something basically for free.
Well, it's not for free, to be honest. It may well be paid for up front, but we've got operating costs, we've got the disruption, there's a whole lot of impacts it would have, and based on the experience with the City Rail Link, that's having a massive impact on the city. What I'm saying is there is a much cheaper way to achieve more for the region, and I think that based on the feedback I'm getting from others, that is a concern for people, that project. So I'm not saying there aren't people that support it, but what I'm looking for is how do we unlock access around our region as fast as possible, as cheaply as possible, and touch more people. So I'm going to have a go at actually persuading the government about that, because at the end of the day, it's a mega project that could cost well more than the $15 billion by the time it happens. It will be disruptive, and I just think there is a better way for our region, and I would like to have that conversation. Well, I'm not sure that it is actually. I mean, we're going to have the ongoing costs of that project. I just think there is another way. We could imagine what we could do if we got that money for other projects. Imagine how much we could do with it.
All right, thank you. I think we've had three. I'm sorry, those who wanted to speak up, and we just need to move on to the closing statements now. And with these closing statements, we've asked of the candidates not to repeat the opening words and tell us their life stories, but instead to tell us that if they were here on this stage as mayor in 3 years' time, what they would have hoped to have achieved and what shape they'd expect the city to be in. And we're going to start with Viv Beck.
Okay, in 3 years' time. So I believe to unlock the potential of... How long have I got?
Don't worry about that.
Okay.
2 minutes.
So I believe to unlock the potential of our region and come out of COVID well, we have to address the top issues facing us. So within 3 years, I do want to have made a tangible impact on the issues that I've talked, on the solutions that I've talked about tonight. Most importantly for me, I actually want to see a change in the culture, how we're engaging with our communities, how we're caring about their needs, how to make sure we're not inflicting things on them that they're angry about. I want to have a more united place, that people actually feel when decisions are made, they actually trust them and respect them, even if they don't always like them. That is what I'm seeing is missing at the moment, and that is the difference that I want to be able to bring. Have I got longer?
Sure.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I just wasn't quite sure. I'm looking at that
sorry.
too there. Yeah.
Yep.
So for me, it is partly about the leadership and cultural change that will actually build our region and help us not only address the things that need fixing, but build a place that we all want to live, our kids want to live, and their kids want to live. A lot of people are telling me that they might leave because they're so concerned with the things that aren't working, and they're so concerned with so many decisions that are coming at us from Wellington. We have to address that balance. We have to lead our region in a way that is good for all our people, not just some people. And I think that will come down to how we engage with communities, how we actually make those decisions around the council table, because the mayor is only one of 21 people. You actually have to be able to work together to make sensible decisions that people respect. You've got to be able to drive that performance through the council group and the CCOs, and you've got to have a good constructive relationship with government. So those are the things that I would like to see, so we are actually coming out a more vibrant, resilient, connected place, and we can see those improvements in 3 years. I'd like the trust of council to be higher than it is now.
Right, thank you. You've got 2 minutes.
Okay, in 3 years' time, the City Rail Link will be finished. The eastern and western busways will be finished. The city will be cleared of construction work and you'll be able to move around it better. The buses will be sped up with IT. The finances will be under control and we'll be starting to put away money for new projects which we choose. Light rail will be parked, the Three Waters won't have happened, the containers will be delivered on trains, the cars will be gone and they'll be starting a new build on leasehold land where the cars are now, bringing parks and new restaurants and businesses down to the city. And the city will be safe right across from Wellsford to Pukekohe, and we'll have a government which is actually listening to Auckland and a bit scared of the mayor. Thanks very much.
Craig Lord, do you want them to fear you?
No.
What would you want to be saying in 3 years' time?
In 3 years, I would like to be saying, well done to those inside council who have helped turn Auckland Council into a service provider. Well done to that team who have ended up working for the people and provided them with the services that they're actually wanting, where their rates is going to be spent and how they get around the city and how services are provided to them. And this is right down to parks and spaces, sport and recreation, the ability to have a park-like centre in the CBD, changing it to a civic district instead of a business district, pedestrianise the lower section of Queen Street, and let's have people going there in a family-centric environment. Let's have people after 3 years saying, hey, my streets are clean, my gutters have been cleaned out, my drains have been unblocked, the culverts are cleared, we've trimmed the trees from the power lines. All those basic core services that everyone moans to me about day after day, I want in 3 years them to be saying, thank you for having a council that is actually doing those jobs, the jobs they're paid to do, and the main role of council is core services, not social services, serving the people with core services. We'll put Efeso in to do social services in government. That's his job. He'll be brilliant at it.
Efeso Collins. 3 years' time. You've been mayor for 3 years, you're sitting here at Auckland University and you're reflecting on what has been achieved if you've done it.
We'll be a proud city, a city that will look at what we've done and made sure that our children have opportunities for the future. We'll have people looking in from overseas into our city, whether it's Singapore, Busan, Taiwan, Samoa, thinking, I want to go there because like what the Auckland plan says, it is our Maori identity that sets us apart. A city that is diverse, a city that welcomes inclusion, a city where fair, free public transport means we're connected it again. We're getting to our universities. We're getting through to meeting up with friends and family. That's the kind of city I want, where we're connected, and we're going to have a city that's going to grow. 2.4 million people in the next 18 to 20 years. That's a city that needs to be connected, a city that is respecting of one another, and a city that's going to be led by a mayor that you can be proud of, that you will look at and think, that is Auckland on the world stage, that is Auckland on the domestic stage, and it's time that we all lift our eyes and dream again for a brand new city that's going to take us forward.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank all of you for your thoughts just then, but also for your insight tonight into how you think and how you might operate as mayor. Good luck with the rest of the campaigns, and to all of you in the audience and on live stream, grab that voting form. Make a choice. Vote. Your city depends on it. I'm going to be joined now on this stage as the candidates either gather over there to hear what the experts think of them, or if you're moving on. I'm going to be joined on the stage now by Lloyd Burr. And the panel will very soon be giving their view. Oh, the light.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. You got a microphone?
I've got one on here. Are you on? Yeah. Jonathan particularly has been writing in shorthand, which is something I haven't seen in a long time. This here is Jonathan Milne. He's the Newsroom Pro Managing Editor. We've got the Auckland University Students Association President, Alofa Lefai, and Jennifer Curtin, who is the University of Auckland Politics and International Relations Professor as well. So we're going to dissect and digest and analyse and I guess generally have a bit of a banter about what we've all just seen. So I'd like to we'll start with you first, Jonathan. Just 2 minutes each. I'm not going to be timing though, because I can't be bothered doing that. 2 minutes, analysis of the candidate's performance.
Testing. This is pretty much the first time I've met most of these candidates. I did have the pleasure of sitting next to Viv Beck for lunch last year. And I was impressed then by her intensity, by her commitment to Auckland. But sitting here today, I wasn't at all convinced that she clearly put forward her vision for Auckland, a big ambitious vision. And I think, to be honest, all of the candidates suffered a little bit there, particularly around transport. We saw some, I guess apart from Craig Lord's aerial monorail, he was looking to the sky in a lot of respects today. But apart from that, we didn't see an awful lot of infrastructure ambition or new solutions around transport. I say infrastructure because, of course, Efeso Collins' solution around fares-free public transport was not infrastructure, but it does have the potential, if you can pull it off, to make a very big difference.
Nice. What about you, Alofa?
Short and sharp, I think Efeso and Craig held each other. They held themselves well. Viv and Wayne could have done a bit better. Definitely not their best foot forward. I think we'll answer it later on, but what I've been looking at specifically is how they cater to the youth and for students, and only two of them mentioned that, so yeah.
We're at a university and no one talked about students.
Exactly.
Dr. Curtin.
Kia ora, thank you. I'm not going to pick out individuals. I just want to say that I was really impressed by the diverse range of perspectives that we got here tonight in terms of what our city might look like and what those leaders stand for. And these contrasts are actually really good for voters. And the more contrast there is, the better it is. They each in their own way created emotional connections with the audience, some of them negative, some of them positive. That's really important to make those connections if voters are then going to hear the messages that you're trying to sell. And I was particularly impressed with the different ways. Some of them were more forensic than others, but we got evidence to support the positions that they were giving us. Some more than others had done their research to support the evidence that they were proclaiming. But this was a good debate.
Nice. And my few cents for this is that I kind of like to give them a bit of a nickname. Wayne, Stop Wasting Money Brown. I guess he was a bit like Winston Peters, the common sense kind of figure. He had an answer for everything, even the hairy questions. The Viv, a bit awkward, a bit underwhelming Beck. I was expecting quite a lot more from her, even though I know you're sitting right there, but that's a little bit awkward for me. I guess I just wanted something a bit more cohesive, and it just felt a bit bitsy. That's my take on that. Old Craig Monorail Lord, or Craig Bike Vans Lord. The idea of bike vans across the Harbour Bridge was interesting, but you're a conviction politician. You're happy being controversial, which is, I guess, pretty good in politics, because there's not that many conviction politicians that we have who stand for something. And Efeso Phil Goff 2.0 Collins. I guess I'll leave that there. I've only been living in Auckland for less than a year, actually, so I'm still learning about the city as well. I vowed never to live here because it was such a horrible place, but now I'm here and I actually quite like it. And so I'm learning a lot about it, and I've been surprised by what each of the candidates have done. So I'll go through each of our panellists, starting with you again, Jonathan. The surprise of the night. Who surprised you the most, and why?
I would have to say Viv Beck's response on the $353,000 debt was surprising and disappointing. There was a very, very, very long pause. There's been a pause all week on her response on that. There was a very long pause tonight when Tim asked her about that. And my instinct on this problem that she's dealing with is it's probably, there are some interesting characters that circle around the outside of politics. So there's a lot of game playing. And it's probably a little bit of game playing by all involved. But the fact that she's been utterly unable to nip this in the bud, that it's taken a week in which it's circled round and round her, doesn't give me any confidence at all that she's actually going to be able to deal with a real problem, a real crisis as mayor.
Do you think voters care about that? Do you think that'll be in front of their mind?
I think every day that goes by they're going to care more and more if she lets this linger.
Okay. What about you? Surprise of the night?
This is a tricky one. Torn between Viv and Craig. Viv is probably the only female candidate for the mayoral the mayor running. I would have expected a stronger female candidate. Being the only female, you've got so much to push for. That's probably just one for Craig. For someone who has, in a lot of my friend circles and a lot of the students that I communicate with, a lot of controversial thoughts, the one comment that he said, if that's what the people want, that's what we'll do. You know, that's what I guess a true mayor would do.
Professor Curtin?
I suppose I still find the climate position by Craig Lord a little bit hard to fathom, but you know, maybe that's just me. But I do think that, you know, people really care about climate change, and the student activists in the city have been out in their thousands many times over the last 3 years since the last election. My other big surprise is, where was housing in this debate? I think you could ask any Aucklander from any walk of life that housing and intergenerational housing poverty is a really critical issue for this city, and affordability in so many ways, including rental prices. And this isn't all Auckland Council's job and the Mayor's job, but really we need to be having these conversations at a city level, at the highest level within our city.
I guess it's the same with every issue, isn't it? You know, housing's just one of, I mean, everything's in crisis.
Housing in the 2020 national...
Everything's in crisis, so it's like, well, cover
housing
everything
was
that's in crisis
the top
will be all
issue
night.
for voters across this country in the 2020 election after COVID, so we need to be thinking about it.
Could I just come back to you, Alofa, about the female? Viv Beck's the only female who's standing. It must be pretty tough being the only female on stage here. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. I just would have assumed it's going to be one of our strongest points, to appeal to all the women out here in some way or form, regardless of age, that this is the only woman running for mayoral. Why wouldn't you get behind her?
Okay, interesting. My few cents here. The person who surprised me in terms of Wayne Brown, he was not as redneck as I thought, because he's kind of painted as a bit of a redneck, but he came out here and he talked about cyclists. He goes out and he's a cyclist. He talked about trains, not trucks. He liked co-governance. He was pretty funny, and he had a bit of common sense there. I had not actually heard of Craig Lord, even though he's from the same broadcasting industry as me, but I hadn't heard of Craig Lord. One thing that surprised me was the council's core job is to clean our gutters. Has anyone had the council clean their gutters? Yeah, I thought so. I was wondering, I was missing out. So that's what surprised me today. Oh, and also, Efeso Collins used Busan, talked about how, you know, he wants the city of Busan, and that's in South Korea, I think. I thought that was quite a nice little touch as well. So that's what surprised me. All right, let's get down to maybe what these candidates stand for, because this is quite important in politics. Figuring out what they stand for, who they are, and if it's clear when you go into that, when you've got your voting ballot paper and you're like, I know exactly what this person stands for, they're getting my vote. So we'll start actually down the other end this time with Professor Curtin. Was it clear what each candidate stood for? I mean, based on what you saw tonight, will you leave tonight going, oh, I know exactly what Viv Beck stood for, or exactly what Craig Lord stood for?
I think yes, and what they don't stand for as well. But I think really it's been really productive, and I think we should underscore that the debates format, even though they've done hundreds by the sounds of it, are a really useful way to get people to hear what they stand for and what they don't stand for. And I think probably a lot of people around Auckland do. So yeah, that's, I think, and I suppose if I had to say the two that stood out for me were Viv and Efeso in the way that they targeted both their base. I'm just putting my political science hat on for a moment.
That's what you're up there for.
The base
Yep.
and the swing voters. So they tried to go for both, and that's really important.
Alofa.
Definitely. I can say that I understand that Wayne stands for construction and finances, Efeso for the people, and climate change, and Craig for poor services and whatnot. And like Jen said, there is a diverse offering within our mayoral candidates, and they only had half an hour for about 2 minutes each to try and pitch this to us. So I think definitely they've hit the core part of their campaigns.
You're right, it's hard when they've got such little time to fix so many problems. Jonathan?
Yeah, I thought it was really clear cut. It was about leadership style, and what we saw from Efeso and from Viv Beck was a real commitment to collaboration, deliberate, expressed. And what we saw from Wayne Brown and from Craig Lord was a willingness to swing on in there with a big clunking engineer's hammer and drill and power saw or whatever the hell else. And it did, just an hour before I came here, I was talking to Tenby Powell. He quit as mayor of Tauranga this term because he couldn't make it work. He came in as the outsider with his big bold ideas. He didn't know how the council worked. He didn't know the councillors, and it all kind of fell apart. He couldn't push through his big bold vision. I worry for Craig Lord and Wayne Brown that if they were to come in, they would have real difficulty actually engaging with their fellow councillors, bringing along a majority, and engaging with the yes ministers of the council.
No, and we'll get to that in a little bit, whether or not they understand the political reality of being able to deliver their promises, because that Timmy Powell example is quite a good one. He went in there with a whole lot of promises, and that's what got him elected.
He was in Ukraine when I spoke to him, doing a humanitarian aid mission.
Yeah, he's over there delivering ambulances, I think. Was it clear what each candidate stands for? With Viv Beck, no, I've written no, because I think with co-governance, I've written, does she even know what it is? The enough, it kind of, enough is enough, that sort of lacked a little bit of detail. And the fact that at the beginning she said, I care a lot about people, and that's at the heart of this campaign, but then she went in and said, no light rail, and a whole lot of other things like that.
Was she making up policy on the hoof? I mean, I loved, what was it? I like trees. I like trees too.
Is it a policy? I don't know if that's a policy. I think that's, yeah, I mean, we all like trees, don't we? Yeah. That's what we're here for. We're a panel, and we're basing it based on what our own views were from what we saw here. I mean, that's what panels do. With Efeso Collins, was it clear what each candidate stood for? Yeah, I guess more of the same of what we've got at the moment. I guess more of the same. With Craig Lord, yep, he's a conviction politician. No three waters, no co-governance, no cycle lanes, core council services, and Wayne Brown, just cut spending. And he said that too many times to forget. Will they be able to deliver their promises? Because it's all very easy to sit up here and have these big policies about cutting council fat and making sure that the glazier is not from Pukekohe and the toilet block's not from Gizzy. But do you think they will actually be able to do what they're saying? Alofa, we'll start with you.
I don't know. No, I don't know, because I mean anyone can come and look at financial reports and sit up here and throw numbers at us, right? But it's what they actually do when they get in that role. Can they actually deliver? I truly don't know, and it's not just them, it's the team behind them.
Professor Curtin, do you think that Wayne Brown, if he becomes the mayor, can cut the fat and slash the spending and do all of those things?
Well, I suppose what we've been witnessing is kind of like a presidential election debate where they're talking about what they will do as individuals, but we know that councils are important, local boards are important, and so I would just support what Jonathan said. It's about leadership style and how they're going to bring the council with them and how they're going to bring local boards with them and then translate that to communities as well. So I'm not sure. I suppose it's a little offer on this. I'm not sure if Wayne Brown can do that, but I do think that in terms of what was said tonight, I'd get an impression that Viv and Efeso could do it better.
I mean, you must have seen campaigns in the past of mayoral candidates come up and promise similar things. Have they succeeded?
Well, I suppose I have a problem with the national level not sharing enough resource with local governments of really big cities, and so to some degree they are hamstrung in what is possible, and that undermines a really big vision for Auckland.
But it's such a cheap shot, isn't it? I think all of them up there at different points this evening were taking these swings at Wellington. Now, you know, I'm from Wellington, okay, fessing up here, but it's easy, it's cheap politics to take a swipe at Wellington, but it doesn't actually deliver solutions, and they've got to go down there and work with Wellington.
We also don't have a very good financial model for sharing income between central government and local government.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, and there's a commission for the future of local government that's going to be looking at new revenue models for councils in the coming year, and I think that's going to need to deliver some answers.
I was going to ask you about that, but you kind of already have answered that regarding whether or not they can deliver their promises. The political reality as well, a few of the candidates came and said they kind of want to gut the council. There's people who are paid too much and overhaul it. I mean, that would be pretty interesting in a council, wouldn't it, if you've got a council hater as the head of the council, at the helm of the council. So how would that work if Craig Lord or Wayne Brown was at the helm, and they'd have a whole lot of people working for them, and those people would know that the boss hates them and wants them gone.
Yeah, exactly, and that was the point I was making about collaboration versus coming in as the big clunking fist. Look, don't get me wrong, there's merits in both approaches. We want people who know how to work with councillors and officials and who know how to build consensus and coalitions. We also want people coming in with fresh ideas from outside and willing to sort of create a little bit of a stir. But that latter for Wayne Brown and Craig Lord, that's a very difficult path.
All right, we'll finish on the final thoughts. Around 2 minutes each to summarise. Who's got the best vision for the city in your opinion? Who's convinced you they're a good mayor? And maybe pick a winner if you'd like. We'll start with Professor Kurt.
Okay, so I was measuring. I was such a girly SWAT nerd, and created a bit of a template for myself with what a good performance in a debate looks like, and then ticked and crossed and things. So I went for things like how inclusive was their message, how visionary were they, how aspirational were they for our city, did they want us to be a global city, were they passionate about their message, and were they fiscally responsible, did they care about co-governance and that it means partnership and management under Te Tiriti, and did they care about marginalised voters and how to get the youth vote out? And so on that basis, my vote goes to Efeso Collins.
Nice.
Not my vote. Sorry, I didn't mean just my vote tonight.
Oh, it was like the X Factor. Alofa, what are your final thoughts, and who do you think won tonight?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm here as a student president. My first and foremost priority is students. And I'm not saying I'm counting how many times they said the youth or the students or, the kids. I was looking more at, are there goals fit for purpose for the next generation to come through, not just domestic students, international students that are here that pay twice, 3 times, 4 times the fee that we pay. In saying that, Viv had very aspirational goals, but in terms of delivery, I'm not sure. Efeso, and I'm not being biased because I know Efeso was a president at AUSA, in 1999, but I would have to say, it really shows. It really shows having led a student association and having that lead into this kind of Mayoral campaign, learning to listen to the people, to what they need. It starts from the students and it ends up in I guess, the population. So I'm going to have to say Efeso.
Great. 2 votes for Efeso Collins. Jonathan.
So not getting a vote from me. I'm not a girly swat. I tend to do reckless reckons instead. If I was running a scorecard, I would have been giving big red demerit marks to some of the more swingeing rhetoric we saw, the easy sloganeering, that whether it's about Wellington or about climate change, Mr. Lord, or about co-governance, Viv Beck. These are easy slogans, but didn't seem to be well founded in evidence. As you said, Lloyd, I wasn't convinced that Viv Beck had a clear idea what she meant by co-governance. I had a terrible law school career, but I did pass contract law, and I'm pretty sure there was a contract somewhere back there in 1840 that might have had impact on land and fisheries and forestries and maybe even a little bit of water. So I think a bit of co-governance around Three Waters might not go amiss. But the person with the fewest black marks next to his name tonight was Efeso Collins. We haven't actually talked much about him, perhaps because he didn't put his foot in it very badly. So that's the closest you get to any kind of endorsement from me.
Okay, well, so we got 3 votes for Efeso Collins. I hate doing this, and I didn't have a table like you, and I actually didn't get into first year law, second year law at all. I failed, so this is just going to be the vibe sort of test from me. I'm going to call it a draw between Efeso Collins and Wayne Brown, only because, I came in here thinking Wayne Brown was going to be this hardcore right-wing budget slasher, and he is a budget slasher, but he likes trains and cyclists and co-governance, and he was pretty funny. So Efeso Collins very polished. Wayne Brown just surprised me. So I think, in my opinion, it was a draw between those two.
And none of you quit, because we need a good race for the city. So keep at it, guys.
Thank you very much for coming. That was